Hi there, and welcome back to Rose Connections. I'm Janet Rose, and today is a relationship reboot day. It's when I want to talk more about those ways in which we can transform our relationships by just making some small adjustments in either how we perceive other people or how we interact with other people or how we show up as ourselves with other people. Any of those ways are ways in which we can actually transform through our social connections with one another a more just, sustainable, and loving world. Everything that I'm here to do. Anyway, relationship reboot is sort of also looking at that intermediate effect that happens, what other people call the butterfly effect, where that one action, that 1% shift in your thinking, in your viewpoint, in the facet you're showing to the world actually contributes to other people around you, makes it safer for them to be themselves. And then honestly, that's a gift that just keeps on giving all the way down the circle. So today, it would be entirely irresponsible for me not to at least mention what happened at the Capitol on January 6th, on Insurrection Day. I don't know what else to call it right now, and it would be utterly negligent. I'm having trouble with words today because it's still reverberating. We still feel that reverberation happening. We still feel that fear happening. And so today's topic does address that. It addresses that massive, big macro issue, but it also addresses the intimate and the familiar and the one-on-one type of issue of how we interact with each other. And I hope just follow along with me because I'm just kind of free-forming some of this as I go. I do have a tiny bit of notes and a few little bits of outline, which is actually more than I have when I do these. So just hang with me here as I kind of explore this topic. First and foremost, as we look at what happened at the Capitol, we need to recognize that accountability is going to be one of the only ways in which we can truly start to heal from the divisions that have been happening, not only in the last year, not only in the last 4 years or 10 years, but the last 20 plus years. This has been coming ever so slowly for such a long time. And there's so many of us who either work in politics or who have, that ability to kind of see patterns in the familiar, who have been able to put those dots together and say, this was going to happen one way or another on some level. And that for me is a very powerful statement about just what is at risk right now. And when I say what's at risk, I mean we have some very difficult, dark, heavy energies that we are combating in a very, very real sense. In our day-to-day lives, we're combating the darkness of our own despair, the darkness of our own uncertainty, the darkness of so much that is on the line for so many of us. We feel that pressure all the time. And so to see things explode the way that they have in our nation's capital, in the U.S., is a sobering reminder of our vulnerability. And so in order for us to really be able to feel safe again, we need to see accountability. And we need to see accountability, and the shift that I want to invite us to do is to see accountability as an act of love. In so many ways, I have so much respect for the family members that are turning their family members in, their coworkers in. Because in a lot of ways, it is like, unless I shine a light on this, this is going to continue festering, and this is going to continue to be wrong, and this is going to continue to get worse. Unless I shine a light on it and someone else knows about it and you are held accountable for your actions, for your words, and for the ideas that you continually spew out there. So I have a lot of respect for those folks who are going to the authorities and saying, "Yeah, that's my mom, that's my brother." That's a very brave thing to do, and it's something that we're going to probably see even more of as we go. But when we talk about accountability, I think a lot of people get really prickly about that term. And I don't blame them, because when I think about that term, I'm always thinking of someone looking over my shoulder. I think of someone who is going to impose punishment or discipline or blame on me. You know, the feeling of, when is the other shoe going to drop? There's a paranoia that goes along with this term accountability in some ways. And it can feel really, really heavy. And so you have one of two reactions that comes up when you even say the term accountability, whether it be in a professional sense or in this global world sense that we're saying, or if we are even saying it in an interpersonal sense with our partners or children. Accountability brings up one of these two options of either it is this feeling of internalized shame and guilt, these internalized images of shame, or it's bloodlust and, I'm going to punish you. I'm going to hold you accountable, and it's that actual gesture that is being made, or you need to be held accountable for what you did, the finger wagging. And it happens across all sectors of society. None of us are immune to it, right? None of us are immune to the consequences of our actions. Of if we are showing up consistently late to work every single day, we can expect to be written up for that. That is a normal, accepted accountability measure, correct? Being written up for something, or being disciplined, or having it put on your record. We also see it in our public policy. For example, accountability is embedded throughout all of TANF, temporary assistance for needy families. TANF requires you to submit work participation hours in order to be paid your very, very small benefit to help you in obtaining work. Excuse me. All right, so pardon me for that. We see it in TANF. We see it embedded in that work participation rate part of the program. We see it embedded in some of our mental health programs. If you don't complete steps A, B, C, D, F, and G by such and such date, then you're kicked out of the program and you've got to start all over again. I mean, very literally, that was the model of a few places that used to refer to me. We see it in our education programs, those school report cards. Report cards that schools give out to our children. That's an accountability measure. And the report cards that states publish about their schools, in terms of how well they, and at the time, No Child Left Behind actually mandated these types of accountability measures. And so accountability is a very strong value within our society. Like I said, it's embedded everywhere, and we see it even in our business interactions. Corporations are constantly being held accountable for poor work conditions, or poor business practices, or racist actions, where we also see, attorneys like me, we are held accountable as well for for adhering to our public ethics. I hope you don't mind. I have a little tiny wand thing, and I find fidgeting is actually a little bit helpful when I do these. And then finally, in our interpersonal world, we see it, we hold our children accountable for meeting certain standards or doing their chores. We put them on chore charts and we ground them if they don't meet our expectations. Same thing with our partners. If they are caught cheating on us, the consequence is the end of the relationship or just constant shaming, or someone is frozen out or they have to go to counseling. So we see this all the time outside of even a criminal context or a legal context. But with all of that said, accountability, when it comes down to it, is not about punishment. It's not about shame. It's not about guilt. It is about responsibility. So accountability at its core, at its very basic, is about taking responsibility for your words, for your actions, and for your thoughts. And yeah, thoughts kind of matter. And especially when those thoughts lead you to create an action and to post words that incite that action, thoughts matter. And thoughts influence how we see the world. And so this is the thought I would like to influence right now, is start viewing accountability as an act of love. Accountability, when we're talking about it in terms of responsibility, it doesn't have to be shaming. Sometimes when I was a mediator, I swear I had a case where, it was this customer and this business fighting, and all the customer really wanted was for the business to just say, "I'm sorry, we messed up." That's all he wanted. And so that's what we spent 2.5 hours getting to, was just an apology, just an acknowledgement of responsibility. And when we see people acknowledge their responsibility, we see them better align with their true selves. We see them better align with our true selves. Because when we see someone say and own up to, "Yeah, I messed up and here's how I want to fix it," that's an important step for us as human beings to see in one another, for us as human beings to see in our relationships with one another, no matter how we define those relationships, no matter how tenuous those connections. Accountability just really matters in the grand scheme of things. So thinking about accountability instead of, that harsh, paranoid, someone's looking over my shoulder sort of mentality, we can start looking at it as shining a light on missed expectations, so that the responsible party can be redirected to a more aligned action or response, or they can remedy the damage that was done. And one other thought in there too is, once those things have been accomplished, once either someone is back on course and back aligned with what we as a society, or we as a relationship, or we as a community have decided is the direction that we want to go in together, once that person's back aligned with that, then we can sit down and start talking about whether the expectation was reasonable. Like, let's first talk about the missed expectation and either get back on course or remedy the damage done, do something to take responsibility, take an action to take responsibility. And then we can have that balance again. Because once that balance is achieved, once you have remedied the harm, once you have realigned with everyone, that's when you can start steering together in a different direction, if that's where you need to go. And so, like, for example, I'm thinking of a project that I was working on in my last job. And in holding someone accountable, one of the ways in which I had difficulty was in holding someone accountable who was having difficulty because of the workload, because of how difficult and deep the workload was. However, because the workload wasn't getting done, I didn't have the freedom to be able to make the adjustments that I wanted to make that workload better. I needed the workload done so that I could move that on. And is that fair? Probably not, but that's also kind of how it works. Is you need to be able to rebalance that person who was relying on you. You need to help them, make them whole again, so that we can then move forward together. So in the end, as we are looking at these videos of people getting kicked off of planes for being on a no-fly list because of their activities in DC last week at the end of their winter break, as we are seeing people get fired from their jobs, get arrested, and as we have bills coming to the floor to hold probably the biggest mouthpiece of this entire movement responsible, I invite you to start thinking of accountability as an act of love. This is about realigning our country to the values that we say we care about. This is us actually walking the walk and talking the talk, because we've talked the talk in a lot of different countries for a very long time. And now it is time for us to put our money where our mouth is. It is time for us to invest ourselves in the accountability out of pure, complete love for our country. This is the right thing to do. This is the right way for us to be able to move forward and to heal, because we have to be able to bring things back into balance for us to have a rational, reasonable conversation about how we want to move forward from this. But we can't move forward from this until we start seeing people held accountable. If we see people escape without consequence, what we are doing is we are sending a message that we don't really mean what we say, that we don't really mean what we say about democracy, that we don't really mean what we say about consequences. And that invites more of this. So in our own relationships, if only we can just shift tiny bit to start thinking about accountability as an act of love, as a calling in. And is it always a calling in? No, sometimes someone needs to get canceled. Sorry, that happens. And the marketplace is very adept at deciding that for itself. So one thing that we need to do, though, is that when that consequence happens, it's because there is no other way to realign this person back with the values other than cutting off the path that has taken them skawonkus, through the wilderness, and taking a ton of people with them that cannot see the very big divergence that they are on. And so we have to be able to cut that path off. We have to be able to say, no, that was wrong. And here's what happens when you don't realize that you were wrong. You have to take responsibility. We have to make that happen. Now, responsibility does not have to look like the death penalty. The responsibility does not have to look or act a certain way. Responsibility is about someone owning their own stuff. And more than anything, as a country, that's what we really need to do. As individuals, we need to own our own stuff. And as a country, we need to own our own stuff, including our very perversely racist history. Okay, so that was a bit longer than I expected, but that's okay. Next week, I will have a radiant resilience, and hopefully at that point, we'll have some better insight into how we're recovering from all of this, because that's going to be very much a very big picture overview. So thank you so much. Please click subscribe. Please drop your comments. I want to definitely hear from you. And please take care of yourselves. We've been through a lot as a nation and as human beings over the last year and a half. And the best way for us to be able to show love to others is to start recognizing that we too deserve some love as well. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for getting through the past year. And I hope that we together can create a more loving, sustainable, and just world. Take care.